Good evening, you're watching News Mongolian Beyond. I'm your host, Tanrkan Batr. And for top stories, JICA to cooperate with 1 billion trees campaign. Pledge to promote gender equality in decision-making and women's empowerment in Mongolia introduced. Mongolia and Turkey to cooperate in the culture and tourism sectors. And for the news, stay tuned. The President of Mongolia, Hursokhna, met with the President of Japan International Cooperation Agency, Tanaka Akihiko. President Hursokhna noted that Japan's support in concessional loans and aid have played a special role in strengthening Mongolia's democracy and market economy and ensuring sustainable development.
Mentioning that the government and people of Mongolia highly appreciate the consistent support provided in education, health and agriculture, he emphasized that JICA's assistance is timely, accessible to citizens and deeply embedded. The president said there are ample opportunities for cooperation in mining, the production of rare earth elements, agriculture, food and tourism. Tanaka Akihiko briefly presented the results of JICA projects and programs implemented in Mongolia in recent years. He expressed support for close cooperation with the 1 billion trees, food supply and safety and healthy Mongolian campaigns. The JICA visit is taking place during the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Mongolia and Japan, the 25th anniversary of JICA's representative office in Mongolia, and the 30th anniversary of JICA's overseas volunteer members being assigned to Mongolia. Tanaka Akihiko has been appointed as the president of JICA for the second time and first visited Mongolia in 2014.
The National Committee on Gender Equality, JICA, United Nations organizations in Mongolia, European Union, Embassy of France, Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, Australian Embassy and Global Affairs Canada pledged to promote gender equality in decision-making and women's empowerment in Mongolia.
Notably, these organizations pledged to advocating for an improved legislative framework which includes and empowers women, particularly young women, in decision-making throughout Mongolia, increasing the quota to 35 to 40% women candidates for 2024 local and parliamentary elections, and removing structural and financial barriers for women candidates to participate in the future elections. In addition, advocating for the effective implementation of relevant legislation to drive key institutions, including political parties, to prioritize gender equality and to be held accountable for non-implementation. Calling for the elimination of policies, socio-cultural norms and practices that perpetuate gender-based discrimination and harmful gender stereotypes within key institutions, including political parties and media organizations, and the leveraging of men's leadership to implement these reforms. In addition, those organizations pledge to integrate gender-sensitive approaches in all their programs and related communications as a means to reduce gender-based discrimination and harmful gender stereotypes, and also encourage institutional networks and mechanisms, for example, political parties, political party women's wings, civil society, grassroots women's and youth networks, to prepare and support potential women candidates for future elections at all levels across Mongolia. The pledge also includes supporting public awareness raising on current and aspiring women leaders, particularly young women leaders, women in decision-making, and highlighting the achievements of women in diverse sectors and their contributions towards the development of Mongolia.
A delegation led by the Minister of Culture and Tourism of Turkey, Mehmet Nuri Ersoy, is paying an official visit to Mongolia. The minister is accompanied by the President of JICA, Serkan Kayalar, the Ambassador of Turkey to Mongolia, Zafir Ates, and other officials. On Wednesday, the delegation worked at the Ministry of Culture and held talks with the Mongolian side. The delegation was received by the Minister of Culture, Nemung, and the Minister of Nature and Tourism, Patirtung. The memorandum on cooperation in the culture and tourism sectors were signed as part of this working visit. The signing of the memorandum will open up opportunities for the two sides to mutually support and cooperation between the cultural and artistic institutions for the two countries, such as theaters, museums, libraries, and the organizations responsible for the preservation, protection, and restoration of cultural heritage. along with fostering relations and cooperation in the areas of theater, music, dance, opera, ballet, visual art, design, art psychology, and art education. The sides agreed to exchange staff in the cultural fields for a mutual exchange of experiences. Moreover, the sides will work together to prevent the illegal trafficking of cultural goods within the framework of the Memorandum of Understanding. In addition, the parties at the meeting exchanged views on the further expansion of the cultural cooperation between the two countries. Since the establishment of the JICA office in Ulaanbaatar, the government of Turkey and the Ministry of Culture and Tourism has been implemented over 770 projects promoting the shared historical and cultural values between the two countries, improving water hygiene control, and providing humanitarian assistance. The Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency JICA is a government department accountable to the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. Focusing on development cooperation, JICA works in more than 150 countries. Thank you for staying with us. Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rate provided by Mongol Bank. Here's the international news from our partner agencies. The South Korean National Security Director advised on Wednesday that South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol condemned North Korea's missile provocation and called for swift action to make North Korea pay for its missile launch. President Yoon Suk-yeol held a national security meeting after North Korea fired multiple missiles toward East Sea and Yellow Sea, with one of them flying over the maritime border and landing near South Korea's territorial waters. Our stance is clear. First of all, the government condemns North Korea for violating the United Nations Security Council resolution and 9.19 military agreement by carrying out provocations. It is also deplorable that North Korea carried out the provocation during the national mourning period. Secondly, any North Korean provocations that threat our citizens are unacceptable, and the government will do everything in its power to respond sternly and swiftly. The launches came hours after North Korea threatened to use nuclear weapons to get the US and South Korea to pay the most horrible price in history, in protest of the ongoing South Korean-US military drills that it views as an invasion rehearsal. Kim also condemned North Korea for carrying out the provocation when South Korea is reeling from the deadly Halloween crowd crush. South Korea's military said North Korea launched at least 17 missiles, all short-range ballistic weapons or suspected surface-to-air missiles, off its eastern and western coast on Wednesday morning. South Korean fighter jets on Wednesday launched 3 air-to-surface precision-guided missiles near the eastern sea border to show its determination to get tough on North Korea's provocations. South Korea's military said the missiles landed in international waters at the same distance of 26 kilometers north of the sea border as the North Korean missile fell early Wednesday. It said it maintains a readiness to win an overwhelming victory against North Korea in potential clashes. Air raid sirens sounded on a South Korean island, and residents were evacuated to underground shelters after North Korea fired at least 17 missiles Wednesday, at least one of them in its direction and landing near the rival's tense sea border. The launches came hours after North Korea threatened to use nuclear weapons to get the US and South Korea to pay the most horrible price in history in protest of the ongoing South Korean-US military drills that it views as an invasion in rehearsal. The White House maintained that the United States has no hostile intent toward North Korea and vowed to work with allies to curb North Korea's nuclear ambitions. The North Korea's barrage of missile tests also came as world attention was focused on South Korea following a weekend Halloween tragedy that saw more than 150 people killed in a crowd surge in Seoul in what was the country's largest disaster in years. South Korea's military said North Korea launched at least 17 missiles, all short-range ballistic weapons or suspected surface-to-air missiles, off its eastern and western coast on Wednesday morning. Later in the day, North Korea fired about 100 artillery shells into an eastern maritime buffer zone that Korea's created in 2018 to reduce tensions, according to South Korea's military. The launch of 17 missiles is a record number of deadly weapons tested by North Korea in recent years. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Wednesday Russia's defense minister had informed his Turkish counterpart that the deal for a humanitarian grain corridor through the Black Sea would continue in the same way as before. Russia has agreed to return to the Turkish and United Nations brokered deal to keep grain and other commodities moving out of Ukraine's ports, the Turkish president said. Erdogan said the renewed deal would prioritize shipments to African nations, including Somalia, Djibouti and Sudan, in line with Russia's concern that most of the grain exported since the agreement first was reached in July was ending up in the richer nations. Now a piece of good news. Following our talks with Russia and President Putin, Russia's defense minister called our defense minister Hulusi Akar and said grain shipments would continue in the same way as before. Russia suspended its participation in the grain deal over the weekend, citing allegations of a Ukrainian drone attack against its Black Sea fleet. Ships loaded with grain departed Ukraine on Tuesday despite Russia suspending its participation in a United Nations brokered deal which aimed to ensure safe passage of critical food supplies meant for parts of the world struggling with hunger. But the United Nations had said vessels would not move on Wednesday, raising concerns about future shipments. The United Nations and Turkey brokered separate deals with Russia and Ukraine in July to ensure Africa, the Middle East and parts of Asia would receive grain and other food from the Black Sea region during Russia's war in Ukraine. A Moscow court on Tuesday fined the Wikimedia Foundation for its refusal to remove inappropriate content from its website. Wikimedia Foundation is a non-profit organization that runs the online encyclopedia of Wikipedia. The organization has been fined 2 million rubles for the refusal to delete false information about Russian war in Ukraine. In April, a Moscow court had already fined the Wikimedia Foundation 3 million rubles. The reason for the fine was false information in 7 Wikipedia articles about the special military operation, including information about atrocities in Bucha and the destruction of Mariupol's theater. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu claimed that NATO is building up troops close to the Russian borders. The number of troops already reached 30,000 and may increase in the near future, he added. Belarus might also be under attack, Shoigu said. The minister accused the United States of taking advantage of the situation in Ukraine in order to weaken other countries, including European ones. Shoigu went on to accuse Western countries of ignoring nuclear blackmail by Ukraine. He referenced comments made in early October by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky via video link to the Sydney-based Lowy Institute. Speaking through an interpreter, Zelensky said that to deter the use of nuclear weapons by Russia, NATO and the international community must take preventive strikes, before the interpreter corrected himself to say preventive action. His spokesman said that Zelensky was actually referring to imposing sanctions on Russia. Now let's take a look at our regular feature on sports. A large mural of late Argentine football star Diego Maradona has been unveiled in Buenos Aires ahead of this month's FIFA World Cup in Qatar. The painting, located on the side of a 14-story building, shows Maradona wearing his national team's jersey with his right hand in a fist hand and a defiant expression on his face. Street artist Martin Ron was behind the mural, which he says was inspired by a photograph of the then Argentine captain that captures his expression shortly before they sang the national anthem at the 1990 World Cup final against West Germany, which Argentina lost 1-0. We, 40 million Argentine people, when the ball starts to roll and we sing the anthem, we are going to ask him to help us and enlighten us from heaven so that we can finally have a joy for all the people. Diego Maradona left us very young. He had a lot to give. Just to think of the value of a jersey worn by Diego Maradona, Diego was the best. We miss him. The image of Diego Maradona has been and will be very strong. He was our reference and our captain. He was everything. The truth is that he was always close to us. Today we are going to have a World Cup without Diego. I hope that from above he can accompany us and enlighten us.
arriba nos pueda.
Ron claims the mural in the Argentine capital is the largest one of Maradona in the world. South Korea will head to their 10th consecutive World Cup finals in Qatar this November. South Korea captain Son Heung-min will undergo surgery on a facial injury, jeopardizing his availability for the World Cup in Qatar. Son Heung-min, one of the Asian soccer's most high-profile players, was helped off the field during the first half of Tottenham's Champions League match at Marseille on Tuesday after taking a shoulder to the face. Tottenham said Wednesday that Son will have an operation to stabilize a fracture around his left eye. Tottenham have not said when Son will have a surgery and have not put a timescale on how long the former Bayer Leverkusen forward will be sidelined for. The Premier League club didn't say how long it expects Son to be sidelined. Following surgery, the team said, Son will commence rehabilitation with our medical staff and we shall update supporters further in due course. The World Cup starts on November 20th and South Korea is one of the last teams to play its first group game against Uruguay on November 24th. Portugal and Ghana are also in Group H. Tottenham has games against Liverpool and Leeds before the Premier League is paused for the World Cup. South Korea will head to the 10th consecutive World Cup finals in Qatar this November. It will be their 11th appearance at football's grandest stage, the most from an Asian country. The Tottenham forward is South Korea's biggest football star of the moment. Son was the first Asian player to win the English Premier League's Golden Boot Award last season. And at 30 years old, Son is peaking at the right time for the Taeguk Warriors. Here's the weather forecast of world's major cities. Well, that's all for today and thank you for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow with more news and updates. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.